Hello everyone, this is Jackie Williams, and today I want to share with you a short video with some tips and tricks with heat embossing. Now I do quite a bit of heat embossing in my crafting, and sometimes when I teach new people who have even been crafting for quite some years, sometimes they aren't completely familiar or more likely not very confident with heat embossing. So hopefully this video will help. So first of all, the things you need for heat embossing, the basics are you need a heat tool, and no, a hairdryer won't work. It won't get hot enough. You will need a Versamark, which is a clear sticky ink pad, and you will need the embossing powders. Now currently we offer a set of 3 powders in the metallics. We have copper, gold, and silver, and then another set which they call the basics, which are black, clear, and white. Now the embossing powders themselves are actually finely ground plastic, and when we put it on our image and then heat it with our heat tool, it melts the plastic down back into a more solid form. So let's get started and I'll show you a few examples. We'll first start with a piece of red cardstock. Now before you stamp with your Versamark or your sticky ink pad, you may want to use what we call an emboss buddy or an anti-static bag, and that just removes anything wet or fingerprints or any static electricity off of the cardstock. Now if you don't have one of those, you could also use a microfiber cloth, or if you are in a country that sells them, they have cloths that are called Swiffer cloths that do a similar thing. In addition, if you do have an emboss buddy, sometimes it leaves a little bit of white powder. You could use this to remove the white powder, just a microfiber cloth. And then we want to stamp our image. Now your Versamark pad is clear, but it is very sticky, which means if there's anything on your stamp or anything in the air, it will attract that to the ink pad. So if you've got some little marks on your ink pad, don't worry too much about that. It's still going to work absolutely fine. So we're going to stamp that down, and we want to be careful to not get ink where we don't want it. And I did do another video with some tips about stamping, so you can refer to that one for tips about how to not get ink where you didn't intend. And then we're going to put our powder on. So it's helpful to have a shallow but wide container to put your powder in. Some people like to have a spoon in their container. I'm someone who does not like to have gritty things on my hands, so I don't like to have a spoon in there because the spoon has gritty things on it. So I just like to dip my paper into the powder and shake off the excess. Now it's at this point where I think a lot of people get stuck. You want to make sure that you don't have powder where you don't want it. So you can just use your finger to brush off any excess, or if you have a little brush, you could use that, because if there's powder where you don't want it, when you heat it, it's permanently there. So you want to make it as clean and crisp looking at this point as you can. And then we want to heat it, and you want to heat it in one spot until you can see it turn from powder to white. And I don't know if you can see that on the video, but hopefully you can. And then just slowly move it around your image until it all turns white. What you don't want to do is wave it around like this. I do see that a lot, because what you're trying to do is get it hot enough that the powder actually melts. And by waving it around, you're not allowing the heat to get hot, concentrated in one spot. You're kind of diluting the heat, so to speak. And I do get pretty close. People are concerned that they're going to start their cardstock on fire, which I suppose is a possibility, but honestly, I've never seen that happen. Now then, at this point, I like to stamp and emboss first, and then you can use your punch or your die and then run that through your die cutter to create your finished label or image or whatever it is that you are making. Now I want to show you that process one more time quickly, and this time I'm going to use one of the metallic powders, and this time I'll use gold. And again, I'm scooping it up, shaking off the excess. It looks pretty clear and clean. And then we're going to heat that. So you might wonder why we would use heat embossing instead of just stamping. For one, you won't get this intense of a white color with your regular white ink pad. And so it allows you to stamp on your colored cardstock. It also allows you to add some metallic element to your project, and much more intensely than a metallic ink pad. It also gives a raised element to your stamped image because it is plastic. There is a bit of a texture there. It also resists water. So, for example, on this project, I've stamped the girl from the Beautiful Moment stamp set in white and then washed over it with some water-based ink. And the ink resists, or I should say the powder resists the ink. So the image still shows even though the ink has been put over top. And just a few more examples. This is one where Versamark has been stamped on Night of Navy and then embossed with the white powder. In this sample, the man and woman have been stamped in Versamark and then used black embossing powder, and then the watercolor wash has gone over the top, and as you can see, the black and plastic embossing powder resists that ink. And on this sample, the Happy Birthday has been stamped with Versamark and then used the gold embossing powder, which then matches the gold that's in the papers and on the little bee here. On this sample, the stamps have been stamped with white on black cardstock, and these are really handy to have in your stash ready to go. The white on black, they tend to match quite a few things. And here's another sample with the gold embossing powder, and then it's been colored in with just your inks and a water painter. And then my last sample is white embossing powder over top of the Some Designer Series paper for just something unique for your sentiment. You wouldn't be able to stamp on Designer Series paper and get that white of a look with just ink. So I hope that's been useful for you today, and heat embossing feels a little more achievable. If you have any questions or comments or another tip you'd like to share, please leave them in the comments below. This is Jackie Williams, and thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.